Okay, the purpose of this is to show you how to convert degrees to radians and radians to degrees. We can do this quite simply. So let's look at a few examples. If we want to convert an angle either from degrees to radians or radians to degrees, we have to look at the following fractions. We look at 180 divided by pi. We say that 180 divided by pi, 180 degrees is exactly the same as pi radians. And we take our unknown angle, and the angle can be written in degrees or in radians. So the angle in degrees divided by the angle in radians has to have the same value, that has to be the same fraction as 180 divided by pi. So how do we use this to compute? So let's look at an example. Suppose we have an angle which is 30 degrees. 30 degrees, and I want to convert that 30 degrees into radians. So what I do is I take 180 divided by pi, and I say that equals 30 degrees, 30 divided by whatever the angle is in radians. Now, whenever I have an equation like this, with a fraction here on one side of the equation and another fraction that it's equal to on the other side, I can solve for the unknown value radians here by taking 180 times radians is equal to 30 times pi. So I cross multiply by this, like this. Let me show you. I have 180 times the angle in radians, RAD, I'll write like that, is equal to 30 times pi. And I want to solve for the variable radians. I do that by dividing both sides of the equation by 180. Okay, 180 divided by 180 over here just cancels out. And 30 goes into 180 6 times. So that cancels. That gives me 6 here. So now I solve for this equation, and I have the angle in radians. Okay, so I have the angle in radians is equal to pi divided by 6. So there's an example of how I compute the radian value of an angle, in this case 30 degrees. Now how do we do this in the other direction? Let's look at that. Okay, let me change the background here to black and put new. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay, so I want to compute now from radians to degrees. So I still have 180 divided by pi on one side of the equation, and I'll have whatever my angle is in degrees, unknown degrees. Now let's say I want to convert the angle of pi over 2 degrees, or pi over 2 radians, sorry, pi over 2 radians into degrees. So here's what my equation will look like. Again, what I do is I cross multiply. I take 180 times this, which is pi over 2, and that's equal to degrees times pi. So I'm cross multiplying this way. I say 180 times pi over 2 is equal to pi times degrees, pi times the angle in degrees. Okay, now with this equation I want to simplify it, so I divide both sides by pi. Let me rewrite this expression right here a little bit. This looks like 180 times pi divided by 2, and this is equal to pi times the angle in degrees, whatever degrees happens to be. Okay, now this can simplify a bit in that 2 divides into 180, give me 90. So I now have 90 times pi is equal to pi times degrees, whatever the angle is in degrees. That's pretty interesting. I have a pi on both sides of the equation. I cancel out the pi on both sides of the equation, and I get 90 is equal to the angle in degrees. So pi over 2 radians is equal to 90 degrees. Let's do one more example. And let's say we have an angle of 45 degrees, and I want to convert that into radians. Again, I use the equation that 180 divided by pi is equal to the angle in degrees, which in this case is 45, divided by the angle in radians. Okay, cross multiply both ways. I get 45 times pi is equal to 180 times the angle in radians. Divide both sides by 45. Now it turns out that 4 times 45 is equal to 180. Now, try it on your calculator. 4 times 45 is equal to 180. So this simplifies. Okay, this cancels, gives me 4. 45 cancels on both sides here. So I get pi is equal to 4 times the angle in radians. Divide both sides by 4. These 4's cancel, and I get pi over 4 is equal to the angle in radians. Okay, so I hope that helps you in doing these calculations.